Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London. And you can find me as Skeindeer on Instagram and Ravelry, and of course the Ravelry group Skeindeer Knits, which is where you can find out about anything knit along podcast related that is Skeindeer related. And there are a number of knit alongs going on, so I'm going to very briefly cover those, but not in depth this time. There is the Marius knit along, where we're knitting the Norwegian Marius pattern that employs that particular chart that you can see on the cushion there, and it's going on until the end of March. We are also doing the 1 month long Break the Rules cal, which again, I want to ask you guys how you feel about prolonging the cal for maybe another month or so. It's entirely up to you. I'm happy to close it early or late, depending on how long you want to carry on the conversation, because the conversation is about breaking the rule of the recommended yarn weight. More on that in the group and previous episodes. The third knit along that I am hosting is the year-long knit along of 2018, where we are aiming to make 6 pairs of colorwork mittens for the duration of 2018. So they need to be cast on and bound off this year. So that was the brief summary that I tend to open my episodes with. Welcome if you're a new viewer. This is a knitting podcast where I sit here and chat to you about knitting for quite some time, and welcome back if you are a returning viewer. It's very nice to have you back. I'm in a bit of a funk today. I don't know what. I just hope you can bear with me if it's at all visible. I'm just not feeling 100%, so that's that, and I hope you will enjoy this episode, although I feel like I don't have much to talk about, but I've said that in the past few episodes, haven't I? And it's still lasted for longer than I wanted it to. So let's just get started by talking about my finished objects. I have a finished object, one finished object, and you are looking at it. I'm wearing it. So this is the improv pattern. I say pattern in kind of quotation marks because this is a Raglan recipe by the French Association, and it's just really nice. It gives you kind of nice simple mathematical formula to figure out how to cast on for the neckline. You basically just measure the width of the neck, and I can say this, it's completely free. You measure that and it will give you the proportionate stitch count to cast on until about here, and you work back and forth to raise the back of the neck with Raglan increases until you cast on the stitch count in the front that you need to correspond with the stitch count on the back. And because with Raglans you have equal stitch count here and back there, and equal here to here. And I just knitted, and I knitted and knitted and knitted. There's a really weird shade here. Let's see if I can rearrange the light. Yeah, I bet we can't see the Marius now, we can just see my mess, but that's okay. We have very poor light here today as well, because it's snowing in London. It's like proper full-on snow, so I expect society will have collapsed by now because this is London and that's just what happens. But yes, I was talking about the improv. Yeah, I just follow that recipe and I knitted the Raglan. And about here, I want to say, I'd realised I was actually knitting with half a needle size smaller than I should have for the gauge that I wanted to achieve, and so I went up, which is actually pretty nice because it becomes a bit looser further down, but it has very nice dense proper fit up here, which can sort of hold the shoulder piece, which is really what holds the entire garment. So I'm actually fairly happy with that. I wouldn't have done it probably the other way, or maybe I would have, I don't know. I'm happy with it. And so right after I finished recording last week's episode, I just started dividing for the sleeve and body. Suddenly I was down here, I didn't even realise, and I was recording, and I knitted the sleeves, and the sleeves were fairly quick, and they are full length, as you can see. I feel like they could have been longer. I thought I was knitting them too long, and then now actually they do seem to be just as right length, which to me, in my world, is too short. I'd quite like to have them just like another inch or so, just so I can, you know, that's nice. But also whenever I put on the sweater that I'm knitting, I tend to connect them to my interchangeable cable so that I can put them on, and then I tend to kind of pull them down a bit and kind of underestimate just how short they still are, which has been a bit of an issue when I've tried to make my garments cropped, and they were maybe a bit too cropped. This one is not. I can show you the length. Just gonna get up. Finished yesterday, last night actually. I just had the rib left and I did that. It's got a split rib because I just find that very comfortable. It's really, really loose around the waist. It was supposed to be completely oversized. I had kind of calculated it to be the same size as my no frill sweater, which is really, really oversized. but when I laid one sweater on top of the other, it's clear that this one is a lot smaller. It still has a very comfortable fit, but it's a tad bit more flattering actually, which is okay. And yeah, I like it. It's really nice. It's kind of the sort of sweater I wanted. I've said that for quite some time on this podcast, that I have just wanted what I call a basic raglan, and this is a basic raglan. Just a nice pullover, a nice warm sweater to just put on, to not feel like I can't lounge in it, you know. I want a lounge sweater. I don't just want the fancy fitted cardigans all the time. That's not what I'm gonna like snuggle up in, you know. So I'm very happy to have this, and it's in a lovely colour. And I want to talk a little bit about the yarn, because this is the single ply merino by Pickles, and that is a non-superwash single ply, and it's quite different from a superwash single ply merino, which you may or may not be used to. I really like this. I held it double, so that's why it knit up so quickly, because this gauge is up here was 18 stitches, but then further down as I changed needle size it was 16 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches. If you're international or British or something, then you may find this, you may have the Debbie Bliss yarn Donegal tweed available. It's really similar. The balls look identical, the colours look the same. It's just that the Debbie Bliss has a tad bit of cashmere in it, whereas Pickles merino tweed does not. But yeah, I find them quite similar. So if you do want to have a go at your own burgundy tweedy raglan, then you can pretty much hold the Debbie Bliss Donegal tweed double and probably achieve the same thing, unless you can of course access Pickles yarn in Oslo, which is really nice. I really like this. It's very comfortable non-superwash merino. I am really looking forward to giving this yarn, or a sweater I should say, a good soak. I feel like with the single ply and the fact that they are held double, that will kind of even things out, because it's quite a uneven fabric for the time being, and I think this is just gonna look wonderful after one soak. I think things will just kind of, yeah, even out. What's the point of locking and soaking, right? So I don't know if I have much else to say about the sweater. It was just really quick. Yeah, I didn't even feel like I was on Sleeve Island. I kind of did at some point, but really they did knit up very quickly. I think I spent a day on each sleeve. The body was fairly quick as well. I was kind of halfway through the body before I did the sleeves anyway, and then it just, yeah, it was quick, is what I'm trying to say. I highly recommend it. I think the French Association Raglan recipe is just really good, and it's also good a starting point if you ever want to design your own raglan and have it be a raised neckline that you do back and forth before you join in the round, which I think is probably the best way of doing a raglan, quite frankly. I have done, well, 3 kinds of raglans. The one where you just start off by knitting in the round, and that's what you do. The one where you do that, but you also work in short rows, and this kind which you work back and forth before joining in the round. And I have to say I am quite partial to this method. In the end, probably not that different from the short row raglan it worked in the round. It's just, yeah, kind of like this one, I have to say. And now I think we should move on to works in progress, and the sun came out. Isn't that nice? So yesterday I just couldn't put this project down. I don't know what happened. I haven't touched it really for a couple of weeks. You will remember my Vertices Unite. I knitted on it all the time when I was marking exams in January, and as soon as I was done marking exams I didn't really knit on the shawl anymore, because it's mainly just garter. That could get a bit boring, so it just started lingering a little bit, and then yesterday I suddenly felt like working one big piece of garter. So here we are. I finished the last garter piece. Let me show you here. There's the last little piece of garter. I had finished this piece on Saturday when I was visiting a friend, and I needed to bring quite a simple project. And so in total, just gonna get back a bit, we have Vertices Unite by Stephen West. Yes, you heard it here first. I'm doing the Stephen West thing. I've been drooling after this shawl for quite some time. I just love the blocks of colours and stripes in this, and I felt like that was the right place for my frogged Latvian and me yarn that didn't quite work into my fade. So yeah, this is what we have. So I did start off by doing this section, which is probably the section I am most in love with. I just love everything that's happening here. Amy is a brilliant dyer, honestly. This is amazing. And then I did this. It is also striped, just a lot more subtly. More on colorways and stuff on my Ravelry project page. And look at that. This color is everything. Can you tell that I'm partial to this color? I don't know. just the feeling I'm getting. Oh, this section was a delight because it was so short. I could do it in one evening, a very short evening even. And then here, that was the section I was working on Saturday, and yesterday on Sunday I did this brown piece here, and so there we have it. And so yes, I hear you say, why is it not finished then? Well, because now I get to have fun with an I-cord all the way around this thing. I reckon it'll take my year. So yeah, it's gonna be quite the I-cord. It's a labour of love, as I say, although I mean it's for me. So let's just see how this is wearable, because it is looking a lot more asymmetrical than I thought I'd get. I thought if I fold it over, it will look the same, but it clearly isn't. There is more on one half than the other, so to speak, thus making it asymmetrical. So when I wear it, I'm gonna have to face my arch nemesis of the triangle pointing this way instead of down here. Oh, why me? But I think it's still great. So I can just like, I don't know. It's weird wearing this thing now. I don't know if you can tell, but there are lots of cords on it still, my higher cords, and there's even one needle here. But yeah, this is probably how I would wear it, I reckon. I love it. I think it's really good. I really like it. It's not too big, but it's still huge. That's pretty much my favourite thing about shawls, if they're not too big but huge. I am really in a quite funk today. I don't know, I feel very odd. So yeah, I think I will really like wearing this once it's finished. I hope I will finish it in time for Edinburgh. I have a lot of sort of things that I put as a deadline for Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and I finished, you know, well, the sweater wasn't really a deadline for that, but at least I finished it. I finished 2 cardigans for Edinburgh that I was planning on wearing during the festival, or at least when I can manage to wear anything that's woolly in that really hot festival. But in general, I seem to have put a lot of deadlines around there because I just need arbitrary deadlines to make me finish things, because I have so many whips. Like now that I just cast off this sweater, I still have 20 whips. It seems like no matter how many projects I cast off, bind off, whatever you call it, I have 20 whips. I don't know how this is happening. I don't think I'm casting on much anymore. I haven't cast on anything this week, so I don't know. But once the I-cord here is on, you know, then I will be down to 19 projects, although still 20 if we count the Cozy Memories blanket, but I don't know if we are anymore. I don't know if that blanket's gonna happen. I keep thinking maybe I do want the crochet blanket, but then again, I don't know. Do I like crochet? I can't know until I've started. Once I've started, it's like, well, I've started, then I guess I'm in the same problem or situation I am with the Cozy Memories blanket. I'm just not gonna think about it right now. I'm gonna think about this shawl and how lovely it's gonna be once it's finished. And can I just show you the back side? The back side here, I mean the seams. I actually saw there was a project on Ravelry where they just did this in the same colour to show off these seams on the back side, because they're really quite lovely. If you are doing the kind of joint sections consistently, they actually end up looking really, really neat. Look at that. So I don't think I have much else to say about this shawl for the time being. I think we'll save it for when it is finished with the I-cord and blocking and everything. I hope I can just like kind of push through it this week and be done with it, but I'm not making any promises there because I-cords are boring. I think they're really, really boring. Any sort of knitted on edge, which we will get back to in this episode, believe me. And so that actually leaves me with the last work in progress I have to talk about this week. I know, weird. Me trying to be monogamous, being down to 3 projects a week. It really doesn't fill up this podcast, but not to worry. I found stuff that we can chat about. We're gonna talk about yarn, yes. But first I want to talk about my last work in progress, which I've actually just worked on a bit last night and this morning, and actually managed to put quite a dent in it. It may not look like it, but you remember the dress that I decided to knit, the one cast on I did since I said no more cast ons. Yes, I'm doing a dress in Unspun Icelandic yarn. I say yarn a bit hesitantly, it's roving really. It's called Plötulopi by Istex of Iceland, and this is the dress. It's the Klukka dress. It's a dress I've had in my do desperately want to knit mental queue for years, probably 6 years at least, I want to say. It's supposed to be knit up in Letlopi, but I figured actually this yarn can be knitted up to the same gauge as this dress is recommending as Letlopi. So even though it's essentially a third of the weight of Latlopi. I like it, I do. So this is the lace section that I managed to get through a while ago, and now I just finished the color work, so you can see that here. I'm not sure about my decision about having the kind of petals of these roses be the same color as the dress now. It looks a bit odd. It doesn't really show from a distance, and up close it's just kind of strange, because if they were green it would be fairly obvious that these were leaves, but now it's just kind of like flowers with horns or something. I don't know. I suppose roses can have kind of purple thorns anyway, like this kind of pink purple, so I guess it's okay. I don't care. It was just, it doesn't show up as well as I'd hoped. This is just one of those things with color work, and I had a sense that it wouldn't show up, but it was the one color that I wanted to go with anyway, so I didn't really have much choice. So now I am just working up the main color here, the one you can see on top. I'm just gonna knit and knit and knit and knit in that color until the dress is done. So now I'm decreasing up towards the waist. The waist should have some ribbing, and then I'm working up to the chest, and then working the back side and front side, and it's a tank top with a skirt essentially. Tank top sounds so odd. It really is one of the weird words of English that I'm just kind of, yeah. I have to say I'm quite happy actually to be done with the little piece of color work that this dress has. I'm not sure I'm super keen to knit color work in Plötulopi, just because I like to be quite brutal with my color work. So once I've knitted just a few stitches on this right hand needle, I just kind of go, boom, you know, I really spread it out, and I use a lot of kind of tension to even things out with color work, and I couldn't really do that here. So I feel like it may not be my nicest work of color work, but it's still pretty nice, and nicely spaced out floats on the back, and it's just all very nice and consistent. So it's not bad, it's just like, if I'm going to be a bit perfectionist about knitting color work, then yes, I may prefer my spun and plied yarn over Plötulopi for color work, but in general I am actually quite enjoying knitting with this roving yarn. I talked a bit more about it in the last episode, but just to give you an idea, it's not spun, it's not plied, it's nothing, it's just roving. I could easily break this, but I don't want to do it. Like, if it happens I'm not going to fret about it, but if it I'm just not going to break it on purpose mid-project. I have broken it by accident 3 times. Once when I was working the lace, I mentioned that in the last episode. Once yesterday because I sat cross-legged and the yarn just got caught and I pulled it, and like I was just asking for trouble. And the 3rd time that I really didn't deserve. So all in all, that's pretty good for a tight knitter and unspun yarn. So whenever this dress gets finished, I don't know. I would like for it to be finished this week, quite frankly, because this week in London it's going to be freezing, absolutely freezing. I mean, I said it was snowing. In case you don't know, it doesn't snow in London much, and when it does, it hardly sticks to the ground because it's just too warm for snow here. But I woke up to quite a good load of snow today, so that says something about the temperature. And I've looked at the forecast, and oh god, why can't they insulate these, please? You can tell I've lived for 6-7 years when I'm talking about the weather as much as I am right now. I'm becoming integrated. But yes, I was talking about color work. I made a comment in the last episode I think came out a bit wrong about color work. Like a comment on this kind of discussion we'd have over the past few episodes about what Anne Carlos has said about color work and what's normal for color work in Norway, and I kind of reacted to how they're doing two-handed color work and saying that's the Norwegian way, and I'm like, I've never seen that in Norway. I didn't mean that that's not how people knit color work in Norway. There's not one way that people knit color work in Norway. I have, in my experience, found that most people I've run into do it the way I do, where it's just both yarns over the left index finger. But I don't think it's reasonable to expect that that's the Norwegian way either, and it doesn't really surprise me that two-handed color work knitting is a thing in Norway, because actually back when, you know, when there was bigger class divisions in Norway than right now and people were knitting, it was kind of a survival thing for working class people and people in the countryside. But for the middle class, it was more of a passing of time, as we are doing now, and they knitted differently. As far as I can remember, the wealthier knitters, they knitted continental, because that was a finer way of knitting with fewer movements, and it was for finding people, whereas working class people and farmers, etc., they were throwing, they were making more movements. I don't know why it was that way. That goes to show that both ways of knitting, you know, British style and continental style color work really isn't as much defined by being on or off the continent. It was actually a class thing in Norway, and I've actually heard some people say it's been the opposite in the UK, but I don't know more about that. But the bottom line is, yes, both ways of knitting, left-handed, right-handed, or both, have existed in Norway for quite some time. So I'm not saying it's not the Norwegian way of knitting, I'm just saying I think we need to attribute a lot more diversity than what we're doing right now, especially when we're talking about how do people knit in that country, or how did people knit at that time, obviously with as much diversity as right here and right now. That's going to be my conclusion there. Now, as you may realize, this is quite a short and sweet episode. I like I said, in a bit of a funny mood. I didn't really have much to talk about, but I have had this one thing I thought we could talk about for quite some time, and it seems like now is the most appropriate time because I have time and because Edinburgh Yarn Festival is coming up, and I am so excited. It's the highlight of the year. It's almost a bit of a bummer that it's happening so early in the year, because what am I going to do the rest of 2018? You know, it's going to be the most amazing week. Oh, I am so excited, honestly. But what I thought we'd talk about today is actually what happened to the Edinburgh yarn of 2017. So I've gone through my Ravelry stash. I made a tag for EYF 17. You can go through that, I'll link to it below, but I'm going to talk about it here so you don't really have to. So as some of you will remember, I bought quite a lot of yarn there, and I've said, like at every yarn festival since, let's not make this another Edinburgh. And I think I've done okay there. The actually only occasions that have been another Edinburgh has been my visits to Norway. That's when I've kind of brought home the equivalent amount, because yarn in Norway is so cheap. I'm just, give me all the yarn. And when they keep discontinuing yarn that I really like, which I will get back to after we've gone through my Edinburgh yarn, I'm going to talk a little bit about the change in Norwegian yarn. But first, let's talk about the Edinburgh yarn. Now, some of you will remember that I got a load of BFL Massham DK from Latvian Limited. So this beautiful marbled yarn, it's amazing. I've since knitted up my Birkin sweater by Caitlin Hunter in the 4-ply version of this yarn, because I got more of the Latvian yarn at Yarndale. But the first thing I ever decided to knit with this yarn was actually a hat by Gudrun Johnston. It's the Hansel hat, and it's been one of those whips. I did cast the yarn on, but since getting to the knitted on border, I haven't really wanted to touch it. Sorry. So this is how far I got with knitted on border. There's 3 triangles here. Kind of feeling like they're a bit tight, but I'm sure they will block out. Whereas the rest of the hap is finished. It's just the knitted on border that isn't. And I love how this looks and feels, and I wish I had had it now that it's so cold. But it's in the non-priority whip pile right now because I had to organize all my works in progress, because otherwise I'm just not going to finish and I get overwhelmed. So I've just made 3 piles. There's a non-priority pile, which unfortunately this has to reside in. There's the I wish these were a priority pile, which was actually where this sweater was, and I snagged it anyway. I finished it. Oops. I can apologize for finishing things though. And then there's the little pile by my working area, my bed slash sofa slash lounge area, knitting corner, what have you. It's where I have the priority whips, which is actually a smile that is getting smaller and smaller. It certainly helped to get 2 cardigans off the needles last week. So yeah, this is unfortunately not one of those priorities, even though it is beautiful and feels great, smells sheepy, and but yeah, I think we need to wait for drier days before this can be finished and blocked anyway. But isn't it gorgeous? I actually want to make another hap. It's not even off the needles, and it's kind of been hanging over me for quite some time, but would actually love to make another one in fingering weight this time, because this thing is quite the beast. Now I do still have a couple of skeins of the Laxton's DK weight of the BFL Massham around, and I have bought more since Edinburgh, even though I hadn't knitted up the hap yet, because that's just what I'm like. And also because Latvians are selling the yarn cheaper at festivals than on the website, so whenever I see them, I'm just like, all the yarn, please, please, yes, let me have it. And I'm now thinking I don't have enough of the iron weight, because they have the 4-ply, DK and Aran, which are like the holy 3 weights of British yarn, although obviously we do chunky and lace as well. Yeah, I said we. Oh my god, what's happening to me? And so yeah, I have actually just ended up buying more Laxtons instead of finishing that hat. But I finished a sweater, did that. I wasn't quite the sweater quantity kick at Edinburgh Yarn Festival last year, and that hasn't really left me. I seem to look for sweater quantities wherever I go. I mean, I do knit them up, as you can see, and I did actually knit up the one that I had bought Shillister yarn for. Unfortunately, I was left with a lot more yarn than I thought. I was sure this was not going to be enough, and yet I have 1.5 skein left, which I'm quite frankly not sure what to do with, but I know it's a lovely, lovely yarn, so yeah, I don't know. Could it be a matching hat or something, a cowl, something to go with this sweater? But yes, the sweater itself I did finish. It's the Chuck sweater by Andy Sutherland. Did end up getting a bit of a longer body than the pattern recommended, because that just fitted my waist. I think my waist is a bit low, I think, which makes sense because pretty much every store-bought garment I have bought that has a very marked waist or cropped sweater, they're always too high up for me. So yeah, I guess I have a low waist, maybe I have a long torso. Haven't really thought about this much, so let's just talk about this sweater. I really liked it. It's done. It feels amazing. Like, this yarn truly transformed with blocking. I'm not sure even how, because the yarn was already quite lovely to work with when I was knitting with it. Although, what is going on here? Did I change skein or something in here? Oh my god, I have not seen this. Oh, I don't really care, but that is quite striking. I didn't think this was hand-dyed yarn, so I didn't even think to stripe it. Oh well. Now we know, but I haven't noticed before, so maybe it's just the light that makes it a bit more obvious, because it really looks quite stripy here, but that's never... I've never had that impression of it before, so not too fussed about it. But yeah, I was talking about the yarn. I don't know how this yarn transformed as much as it did with blocking. I just know that it did, and I love it. It's thick but drapey still, and woolly and warm and soft, and hasn't stained off with the red on me yet. I was really worried that it would. Yeah. And also, I was a bit dumb when I was knitting these, because I was like, I don't know why they are short rows on the shoulders, because that seems to me like it will make the neckline wider. That's not what they're for. They are there for actually making the shoulders kind of curve, kind of go lower at your shoulders than at your neckline, because you are a bit an angle here. Oh, English. So I should have done that, because the consequence of omitting it actually means that these shoulders, they stand right up. They don't go down the way they should. They just kind of, it adds to the vintage look. Let's just go with that. Yeah. The other sweater quantity that I got at Edinburgh is the Viola yarn by John Arbon. I hope you will forgive me for not taking it out of the plastic. I put in a lot of effort of like vacuum packing all my yarn without actually having a vacuum bag. So this is just a sandwich bag. That's what I use to wrap up my yarn. I just get them at Norwegian grocery stores. They're made to fit an entire loaf of bread, so I figured they could fit some skeins of yarn as well, and they do. So that's that, but the yarn is the lovely Viola yarn by John Arbon. It's the DK weight Falkland Merino. I think it has a tad bit of... Nope, it's all merino. I thought it had some other fibers, but yeah, it's beautiful. Amazing shade of burgundy, you know how I feel about that. It's come to my attention that this yarn has a tendency of pilling, which is okay. You can, you know, take out your cashmere comb and get that off. But the cardigan I had in mind for it, however, I don't think it will look nice if it gets too fluffy. So I thought about other sweaters, kind of like in this style, that would look fine if it gets a bit fluffy. But now I'm actually thinking a Melody Hoffman shawl in this yarn. I think that would be lovely. I have one in mind. Just need to clear off the needles. I think also, hopefully, maybe some of you will remember that my greatest love at Edinburgh Yarn Festival last year, I think pretty much it was Tokyo Wool, and they had their own booth last year. They don't this year, but I'm pretty sure both Midwinter Yarn and Isolde will be vending that yarn, and they will be vending at Edinburgh, so hopefully that will fix that problem for you. But I really splurged at the Tokyo Wool booth. I ended up with 8 skeins. They are 50 grams, so you could think of that for 100 grams, if that makes it sound a bit better. and haven't knitted up as much as I wanted. I've actually since bought another 2 of the sock yarn and 2 of the fingering yarn. I have knitted up the fingering yarn, but that's a different story. The sock yarn is a work in progress still. It's my Cerbu socks, which is by far my most popular sock pattern. It is incredible how much this pattern just kind of spread to the winds, and everyone just kind of had to get their copy, and it was amazing. I am so grateful for that, and I am really proud of these socks. It's a shame I haven't actually finished the second sock yet, but not for lack of loving this pattern, but because, if I may say so myself, I don't know, I sound like I'm tooting my own horn. It's not because of that, it's actually just because of all the projects that I have lingering around. But this is generally one of my go-to projects when I know I'm going somewhere, when I need to pack multiple whips. I really like it, and I am just at this point in the other sock. That's why these stitch markers are in here, because I want to make sure that the gusset starts in the same place so that they look the same. And I really look forward to knitting the heel, because there's something about the toe up heel gusset. I hate the cuff down heel gusset so much, but the toe up heel gusset and the heel flap and everything, it's good stuff. So, and I really like making yarn in the Too Cool sock yarn. It is one of my favourite sock yarns for the time being, so I'm really glad I got some of that at Edinburgh. It just looks like your average kind of woolly yarn, but has nylon. So yeah, I haven't knitted up as much of the Too Cool sock yarn as I'd wished or expected, but I'm very, very happy about having it in my stash. It's not something I feel like it's burning a hole in my stash pocket. I really love that yarn. And like I said, I also got the fingering weight Too Cool yarn that is essentially the same as the Too Cool sock yarn, except it doesn't have nylon. So this yarn I would not use for socks. This is more of my favorite type of yarn for mittens and such, and I really do like it. Like I said, I bought another 2 skeins, which I have since knitted up into my Eurobook mittens, the ones with the deer that I released for Christmas. It was just more of the shades that seemed suitable for that, although in hindsight I realized I used the same shade of red that I already have. Why? But yeah, these are just like one of those all-purpose yarns for me. You know, they do everything but socks, so happy to have it in my stash. I'm not too stressed about these. These skeins, however, I really wish I had knitted up something in them by now. It's the Corriedale by Old Maiden Aunt, and I just love these skeins so much. They feel great. Oh, they're so good. And the colors, I mean, do I need to say more? And I think these go great together. I have had in mind to do a cowl with them. It's just a matter of getting around to it at this point. Just all the projects. I really want to cast on this yarn. It's something I've kind of looked at frequently. I'm like, I'm ready for you soon. But it just hasn't happened. I actually kind of wanted a sweater quantity in this color, and I know I can just ask and she will dye up more, but yeah, there's enough yarn here to go around for quite some year. And this is also one of those yarns that I feel like, oh, I just need to figure out something to knit with it soon, because it's beautiful, and that is the Tanami yarn by Travel Knitter. I've heard several pronunciations of this yarn, like Tanami and Tamai, what have you. I don't know how to say it, but I know it's beautiful. Larissa has the most beautiful colors out there. I absolutely love each and every one of them, and I have no idea what to do with it. I just know that this is the softest yarn I've felt my entire life. It's a silk camel blend, 50-50, in case you wanted to know, and just need a project for it, or a pattern or something. It will happen. I do actually have a second skein in this base from a different dyer in grey, so just need to think of something. But I'm starting to feel kind of the pressure from myself to do something with this. Now the next yarn that I bought was actually from the Knitting Goddess. Forgive me for not showing it off, because if I pull that out of the stash will collapse. So yeah, it is more BFL Massham, which we've talked about at length, because that was truly the yarn of the year of last year, especially Edinburgh Yarn Festival. And I'm really close to casting on that yarn now, because I've narrowed it down. I really want to do the Granito sweater by Howie Locatelli. I don't know what to do with the contrast color that I also got. I think because I had one skein left from the Birkin, I had one from Countess Ablaze, and now I have this one from Knitting Goddess, and they're all undyed, so they could just go together and be another sweater in this yarn in a neutral color. So I'm not too upset with not actually using them together in the end. I just really want to knit it soon, because I love, love, love wearing that yarn. And because the Birkin sweater doesn't fit me as well as I wish, I for some reason feel like it's more achievable to knit an entirely new sweater than fix the old one. Oh, why? So I also got 3 skeins of Latvian and me yarn for Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I had already the 5 skeins that I had ripped out from my fade shawl, and for some reason I thought I just needed more matching yarns, and I got 3 skeins. One of them has now been worked up into the Vertices shawl. That is the yarn that I used in the biggest stripe section. But the other 2 I have yet to find a home for, but they do certainly correspond to one another, so they can just be whatever they want whenever there's time. And then I can also assess how many leftovers I have from the Vertices shawl to see if I can work them in with this yarn, and that could be quite wonderful. Plus I also have this skein that I got at VKL in New York, so that's Vogue Knitting Live. And these 3 go really well together. I mean, we kind of have some sort of gradient going on here already, and so when I can assess how much I have left from the Vertices shawl, I don't know, I just need to wait for the right pattern or make it up myself. I would love to be able to design shawl patterns. People say it's not hard. I just feel like knitting flat is a bit beyond my reach right now in terms of designing, which other people say it's easier. I don't know, I just know that I feel better about designing yokes and mittens and socks because I'm so confident with it, and so I just keep doing that. But obviously confidence grows with more experience of designing other things, so I hope I can always branch out. Now, JC Rennie had a booth at Edinburgh, and I do believe and hope that they will have that this year as well, and it's really hard to resist just about every little ball of yarn that they have because it's all like Shetland yarn and lamb's wool and things that I really love. But I managed to only buy 2 skeins of theirs, and they live in this project bag because they're being worked up into being this cardigan, which I haven't touched in ages, even though it's gorgeous and it was knitting up so fast. It took just a few days to do the entire body, which is now done. Right, now then I started the sleeves and I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. But now I'm actually seeing how far I got with the sleeves, and I really should have persisted. Oh well, hope I can find that I want to do this again soon, because look how lovely this is. It's a pinaguri design. I was really inspired to cast on another one right after the fleece cardigan, but I did do the casting during some really trying times, and I'm kind of still not out of that place, so picking up this project may kind of spur that again, and I'm hoping that it won't, because yeah. But yeah, the yarn, it's a bit chaotic in this bag, but I found the yarns. These are the JC Rennie yarns that I'm using here, and the ones I got from Edinburgh, so they are being knitted. But if I weren't, I'd still be fairly okay with it. Again, it's one of those thin rustic 2-ply wool yarns that I hoard, and not for the sake of hoarding, but for the sake of actually just having them within reach whenever I have an idea for a design or a costume or what have you, because I just use them all together and they serve the same purpose and I love them. I haven't actually destashed anything from Edinburgh, but this yarn I have so many mixed feelings about. I have a sense that I spoke about this in the last episode, but maybe that was just in my head. It is the Jameson yarn that I got. I even got a lovely tote bag. So it has, it's just full of this colorway, because I really wanted to do the Ursula cardigan by Kate Davies, and I still do. And then I'm like, but it's such a tight gauge and it's going to take forever, and oh no, but then again, wouldn't it be lovely in this yarn? And I'm just, oh, I don't know. So if time passes even further and I've still not wanted to cast it on, I may have to reconsider. But I mean, this isn't taking up a huge space in my stash, so I'm not too stressed. I did also get some Jameson Smith because there was a lack of a appropriate purple in the Jameson yarn, so I ended up getting this, which is a bit vibrant, but hopefully that will work out. I also got some blue and green from Jameson for the contrast colors, and yeah, hopefully it will be the Ursula cardigan for me. If not, then this may have to be destashed somewhere at some point, because contrary to popular belief, I do not actually hoard yarn just for the sake of it. It is for the sake of knitting with it, and most of the time I do. Such as the Blacker yarn that I got, because you know, Blacker yarns are sponsoring the podcast lounge, which is usually the place that I hang out, and couldn't resist some St. Kilda yarn that was hand dyed by the Knitting Goddess, and I have knitted with it. This is what I have left, because this yarn is so generous on the meterage, because it is in fact lace yarn. But I found, and this kind of spurred the Break the Rules Cal, I did some mittens with it. So while the pattern called for fingering weight, I figured with this kind of wool and spun yarn I can totally work lace yarn, and it worked out, and I think they are quite lovely and light, and yeah, they're not, I don't know, I was just really happy with the result. I don't have any many other words to say it. And look, it's the forest pig that is a bear. So it's a shame that I just didn't knit up the yarn with it. I would have loved to say that I've used up some of the yarn that I bought, but there's just so much left in this. It's just gonna go into that, you know, woolly 2-ply yarn pile that I have that I just use up for everything. So again, not stressing about it. But that was everything I bought at Edinburgh as far as I can remember, and I wish I could say that I'd done better at least having some finished projects from it and some skeins that are no more. But it's not terrible either. It's not like everything's just gone into the stash and never to be seen again. Most things have plans, most things are in progress, and yeah, it's not as bad as I thought actually. I'm pretty happy with this. I wish it was better, but there you go. But the main reason I've kind of gone through this with you guys now is, one, to just show what you can do with the yarn that you can get at Edinburgh, but the other thing, to show me how long it actually takes to knit with yarn, to use up yarn, and to not just buy more of the same stuff, to realize how long it will take me to get through the stuff that I get, and just kind of, yeah, put some restraint on myself and have it as a reminder that there's still yarn left from last year. So, you know, hold your horses a bit, Ellie, or whatever. So hopefully you enjoyed that little walkthrough. Now, before we get into the little acquisition section of this episode, I briefly wanted to talk about another thing I got in the mail. It is related to acquisitions, because I got the latest shade cards from Finull Garn, because if you don't know already, I've talked about this at length, but they have, I say they, Roma, the mill in Norway, have merged Finull Garn and PT2. What that means is really discontinuing PT2 and transferring the colours onto Finull Garn, which is why there are new shade cards, because they are bigger, they have more colours than Finull Garn. However, I feel a bit cheated, and I'm gonna just put in a video that I made when I received these trade cards, sharing my thoughts about it. They're not all positive, but I can understand the decisions that have been made. So yeah. So I just got my new shade cards of Finull and PT2 in the mail, and I have some thoughts about it that I thought I would share. And I'm gonna say up front, it's not the most positive thoughts, I'm afraid. First of all, you know, this is one of my favorite yarns. I love it. I think it's great. The new shade cards, they look good. Everything is, I got no complaints. You get to see all the colors in full. Brilliant. So now that that's out of the way, let's do a comparison to the old shade cards, and hopefully you can already see why I feel the way I do. So the old PT2 shade card had 88 shade, and the old Finull shade card had 102. And the two new shade cards come with 117, which is a great color range, don't get me wrong, but I'm pretty sure 192 is a bigger number than 117. And that is probably the main complaint that I have. I totally understand that from a business point of view, from Roma's point of view. It makes a lot more sense to have it all under one yarn. I can totally see that. But first of all, I thought that PT2 had some unique properties. It seems to puff up more than Finull Garn does, I find. So you can see here actually the gauge that is written. I don't get focus. It's 21 to 22 stitches per 10 centimeters, whereas for Finull, where does it say? It is 26 stitches, which is fine. I mean, I don't believe that you have to do what the yarn label says. And yeah, now it says 24 to 26 here, which is weird because it's still the same yarn as the one that says 26. But like I said, I don't really believe that you have to do what the yarn label says, because with this yarn, it is really flexible. But I do think it's kind of supports what I've said about PT2. It is a bit loftier, puffier, it has more body to it, it's a little bit rounder for 2-ply. So yeah, I'm a bit let down that it's gone. But the main thing now, obviously, I'm sure you may be wondering why I'm unhappy about going from 190 colors to 117, and I thought I'd take a few examples to show you. So as some of you might remember, I actually placed a order for this color for PT2 404. The 404 has been retained on the new shade cards. I was going to combine the 404 with a bleached white for the snow mittens, which I was going to get published, and I found when I knitted them together, 404 did not show up well in white. It's too marbled, it just disappeared. Whereas the 83 of PT2 showed up beautifully. Just enough contrast to look faint, but still showed up, and it was great. 83 is no more. There is no 83 here. I'm sure they just looked at 404 and thought, that's close enough, we're gonna do the 404 from Fenrir instead. And I'm disappointed because it doesn't show up the same way in white, and combining with white is pretty much what we do in Norway. So yeah, that was a bit of a letdown. The other huge letdown is 47. 47, it looks quite dark here. No, there we are. Yes. Lovely shade of burgundy. I'm sure nobody's surprised that I love this colour, and I got heaps of it when I was in Norway. But yes, it is no more. So you can see what they went with instead. They went with 488. And as you can see, it's very dark. You can hardly see that it is burgundy. It's not the same. It really isn't. It's not supposed to be the same. I can give you a closer comparison. So you can see that here. All 47. Oh, it comes up darker here. That's annoying. It is a lot brighter. It doesn't come up as bright here than this shade, which is so dark you are wondering what color you're looking at actually. So that was a big letdown for me. I keep summarizing with that. And the other thing is actually their shades of mustard. I'm gonna have to rearrange here a bit again. This is the old Fenrir mustard. It was a very nice matte sort of mustard. I used them in my shine mittens designed by Pia Kammerborn, and I thought it was great for that. It's a very, yeah, greyed mustard, but it still has all its mustard qualities. And the old PT2 mustard was a lot more golden. Very golden compared to this one. So I can see why they couldn't keep both, I suppose. But the colour we ended up with was this kind of neither grey nor golden mustard. It just sits somewhere in between. It's just kind of dull. This colour I thought was very exciting, but yeah, it is quite flat. It's supposed to be. This one's quite flat, but tries to be a bit golden like this one. I mean, maybe I'm just... yeah, they come up a lot more similar on camera. But for me, this golden mustard I am gonna miss. This more matte mustard I'm gonna miss. And I like this, but it just sits somewhere in between without really being either. I don't know. I'm being fussy. I know I'm being fussy. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna try to be positive. I'm gonna look at these and see, is there anything new and exciting then? Any new colours that have been launched, right? We were promised more colours. And I don't see more colours. I see some of the same colours, but not all of them. That is the gist of this. Yeah, like I said, we are now with 117 colours of Fenrir, which is, yeah, that is more Fenrir colours than we had before when we had 102. But if you include PT2, which I always have when looking at the colour palette, we have gone from 190 to 117. And I find that to be a bit of a letdown, honestly. That's my review of that. Apologies for the negativity. It is, of course, still a wonderful yarn that I highly recommend. I just found that it's been a bit... yeah, we've gone down in the number of colours that we had to choose from. That was a bummer. But with this yarn, you know, you can still combine with lots of other yarns out there. You can combine with Spindrift to apply jumper weight, with Usk, with Uradale. You mention it, you know, there's lots of colours from other companies that you could combine with. But PT2, I will miss you. Okay, just because I'm a bit nerdy and I procrastinate, I decided to circle all the colours that have been taken out, and I think I counted 9 colours have been removed from Fenrir, so it's mostly retained. There are a few colours that I miss, but generally they've taken out 9. As for PT2, they haven't really moved over that many. I've written over the ones that are now in the new Nude PT2 shade card, and you can see how many colours we have lost. So you can see the mustard here, they do say that they have transferred that colour. Yeah, so all these colours are no more. Those that I haven't written over what they're now called for Nude PT2. Yes, bummer. I will bring these to... So yeah, that was that. Hopefully you enjoyed that little walkthrough. I have now put my shade cards up on the wall, and I have circled around the new colours that have been kind of retrieved from PT2, and I have now put away my old shade cards where I have highlighted all the colours that are basically no more, and there are quite a lot of them, and I'm rather disappointed. But I will be using these shade cards to just bring home when I'm in Norway, and when I go to a more remote yarn shop, I'll just bring the shade cards with me, because those yarn shops are likely to have the old yarns. They're not as fussed about selling out. They can keep, like, I found yarn with old yarn labels from when I was a child, you know, so there's still a bit of hope if I feel like snagging some late colorways. So yeah, nearing the end of the episode, and I have been fairly good with the yarn purchasing. I did get a bit tempted when a friend of mine wanted to order some stuff from Holst to my address before we meet up in Edinburgh, and so I was like, well, I have kept thinking about this yarn and these shade cards. So the shade cards I got, finally I got the Coast shade cards. It's in a very crinkly wrapping. Hopefully that wasn't too frustrating to listen to, but yeah, it is crinkly as it comes. But I got the shade cards, and this is the cotton wool blend of theirs, which I'm really intrigued about. I haven't knitted with it yet, but I do have, I want to say 6 cakes, so 3 of each color, that I thought I would stripe into some Åsa Tricotsa sweater, because I really am intrigued by her designs and her shoulder fit and all of that. So hopefully that is something I can have time to do soon when, you know, the needles have been a bit lighter. I seem to be getting more garments off the needles, so even if I have a pile of whips in progress, I will still allow myself to knit custom garments, because that is really the core of my Make 9, my own personal queue, most of my stash, and you know, it's the year of the garment and the year of the mitten and what else you like to make. The other shade card I got is their Highland sock yarn. It's just called Highland, but it's an 80/20 wool nylon. And I've always been a bit skeptical of this yarn. I don't know why, it just never impressed me on the photos. But seeing it up close, my goodness, look at that. Look at that. It's not focusing, but hopefully this gives you an idea. I'm intrigued. So I'm not saying I'm going to be ordering that sock yarn next, because I have a fair bit of sock yarn as well. I'm not sure how that happened, but at least I have the shade card, so you know, I don't even feel like I have to add something every time I'm shopping at theirs. As a bit of a side note, I finally succumbed to the whole Outlander craze. I always thought I would save myself for the books, but I never got around to the books, so I realized let's just watch the TV show, and it's all I've been doing lately. I found the first season to be completely addictive, and then now the second one I find is a bit of a lull. I'm hoping it will kind of, you know, happen, but it's just something about the change of setting. I'm not gonna give away anything, but in case you don't know, the TV series is set in the Scottish Highlands, and that's why I'm mentioning it now, because that yarn was called Highland, and a couple of other yarns I've shown off are called Highland wool one way or another. And that is also, it always got me a bit excited because I really love Scottish wool. And now it's getting me a little bit sad, because it reminds me of how the wool industry, because wool had such a high price at the time, it really took over the Highland culture as it was back then. So now it's a bit like, wop wop. But I still love Highland wool, you know. You can't really go back to the old clan cultures anyway, because we are in 2018. It just kind of got a bit bittersweet when I was knitting with my Highland wool. Anyway, let's look at the yarn I got from Holst. I wanted a cone, but they were out of cones, so I got 10 cakes of the charcoal yarn of theirs, because I actually don't have, well, I do have charcoal yarns of theirs, but I'm working that up into my cape. and I really do like that yarn, and I have been drooling over the Feather and Fern sweater by Jennifer Stanglass. I haven't knitted any of her patterns yet, and I've seen a number of people do it, and I've seen a number of people do it in black and white, such as Maria of Ninja Chickens and Patricia of Knitography, and I want one too. So this is going to be held double for the main colour, and I already have cones of shades of white and light greys that I can have for the contrast colour in the yoke, also to be held double, so they will need to be wound off the cone, but that'll be fine. And hopefully I can have one of those quick colourwork sweaters, because I haven't really done that for a while. It seems like when I do colourwork sweaters I go fingering weight and they take ages, and when I do non-colourwork garments like this, they're quick because they have really big needles and thick yarn and generous gauge. So that is a thing I am looking forward to. Now, I wasn't really going to do any special announcements for this episode, but I seem to be feeling more in the spirit of doing that right now, and because I have actually received the yarn, I feel like it's safe to say what I'm about to do with it. I hope I will get around to actually knit with it soon, so that the design can be with you sooner. But I will start off by showing you the yarn because it finally arrived in my mailbox. After having the first batch disappearing in the Christmas mail, I can finally tell you one of the many things that I am excited about as of late, which is... what is this? Do you recognize the logo? This is hand-dyed yarn by a homespun house in rustic yarn. Look at that. Can we just appreciate? Look at that. Oh my days. So I have a mitten design in mind for this. Yes. And I'm thinking contrast colour, main colour, cerebral mittens, yeah? So that is the plan. I think that would be very, very lovely, and thank you so much, Molly, for giving me this opportunity to finally use appropriate hand-dyed yarn for a colourwork pattern designed by me. So I'm just gonna like play around with these, you know, pretend that they're spaceships and what have you, and oh god, I need to go back to bed. Oh, it's snowing even more. Oh, that's so lovely. And it almost, like, the amount of snow now is actually quite violent. Anyway, the yarn, it's lovely. I can tell you a bit about it before I put it away and talk about the last thing I got. This is 100% local German wool. It's got 200 meters per 50 gram. And this is the blackberry jam colorway, whereas this one is the brighter in the dark. So there. I'm just gonna hold up this for a while and just look dorky and just show my excitement, because oh, this is gonna be so much fun. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a taste of the other exciting things I have in store as well that I haven't been able to announce yet, because I like to just keep those things properly zipped up until I can share it with a bit more confidence. And the yarn is here, so I mean, what else could go wrong now? Someone could set my house on fire. I suppose that could happen. Anyway, last thing I got in the mail, which I had pre-ordered ages ago, and finally it's been released. Knit Like a Latvian. So this is the book by the people that go under Knit Like a Latvian. I believe they've also gone under Hobby Wool, if these are the same people. But if you've been to any UK yarn festivals that have these people vending, you will have seen their black cardboard boxes of yarns and patterns for Latvian mittens. I have previously kind of sort of complained about their pattern writing style, although I do love their kits. I think the designs of the patterns are amazing, and I love the yarns so much. And the kits are really cheap, so I really love them. But I have had some reservations about how the patterns are written, which I do fully and completely attribute to both translations and different traditions, because I come from a tradition of writing patterns a bit differently than what's mainstream online right now as well, and to some extent I will defend it, because I think spoon feeding the knitter isn't always the best thing, and I think just helping the knitter to get some of the way and then make their own decisions while still, yes, holding their hand, but not hand holding, do you know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like maybe these patterns, that is lacking. I do think sometimes less is more in a pattern, where if you don't outline everything, you can show that what isn't clearly defined is up to you. if it's ambiguous to the point of you could go either way, it means you can go either way, and that's fine. If it's ambiguous to the point where you're like, if I do one way, one of these ways have to be wrong, you know, that's going to lead to two completely different things. That's not good. And sometimes I feel like maybe that can be a bit of an issue here. So I haven't looked at these patterns in depth, but I have kind of had a little bit of sneak peek through, and it is the same issues that I'm having with the boxes with the patterns, is that they emphasize gauge a lot, which really speaks to me, but then they don't actually tell you anything about it. They don't give you a range of what to expect in terms of gauge. They don't give you an average. They haven't measured the gauge of their own mittens. I have had the fortune to be allowed to measure the gauge of the mittens at their booth, so I know the gauge, which has usually come to be about 36 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches. I think I measured about 5 centimeters and they were about 18, give or take a stitch. So that helps me. But that it would be great if that was just written in here, or just do what I do in my patterns, give a range of gauges and tell the reader, the knitter, what sizes each gauge will lead to. Because here you're just really being told that gauge matters and needle size matters, but not what you can expect with choosing one or the other. It just goes a long way there, which I think is great, but could go one step further to really be helpful. But having said that, I am so happy to have this book. It is beautiful. I'm going to give you some sneak peeks through. So here they tell you a little bit about gauge and tools and what have you. Yeah, this is the one where they kind of go over that. These actually have a very remarkable kind of cyber mitten look to them. I've seen them in their booths and I always found that quite fascinating, how much they resemble one another, and perhaps not so surprising because of trade that has gone between, you know, all these colour war countries, the Baltics, the Scandinavian countries and Shetland Islands and what have you. These are the mitten versions of the mitts on the cover of the book. I love them, but quite frankly I think I would perhaps possibly duplicate stitch the red, because this is the reason I've never actually finished any of the mittens on my kits, because the ones I started knitting, you have to carry 3 strands and I just don't feel for carrying 3 strands at once. This is actually one of the mittens that I have a pattern for in my box, so hopefully that gives you an idea. I think this book is fabulous, but I am not going to put a beginner friendly stamp on this. That's, I think, is going to be my summary. I love it. I'm glad I have it. I would recommend it. But really the only way you can find out about mitten fit and needle size and gauge is just by casting on something, and either it will work out for you or it won't. They do have a bunch of cuff patterns in there. So those are kind of the swatches that they recommend you have a go at first, so you can actually assess then by having it to the cuff how well they fit at each different point in your hand, which is pretty nice. So there are ways to work around it, but I just feel like they could have done the job of giving you the gauge to size ratios of each. It's just how I feel. But yeah, hopefully that little shallow review was helpful at all. I literally just got it in the mail yesterday, so you know, or the day before yesterday, but I wasn't in then. So that is really all I have for you this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, even though I seem to be in quite a funk. I think I have to do a lot of editing and cutting, and well, not in this episode, so hopefully it's not going to be too choppy for your viewing pleasure, and I will see you next week. Bye!